This is the Aftermarket Radio Network.
Welcome, everyone, to yet another episode of Diagnosing the Aftermarket A to Z. I'm Matt Fanslow, and John is a man of focus, commitment, sheer will, something you know very little about. That and more after a word from our sponsor, NAPA Autotech Training. Check out our NAPA Autotech Facebook page to find out the latest NAPA Autotech virtual class scheduled at a time that is convenient for you. Learn from the comfort of your home. Maybe some of you know that my youngest son has a lot of the markers and symptoms, and I guess he's been formally diagnosed with ADHD, which is kind of what we would call a neurodivergent condition and a mental health condition. We used to just call it ADD, really, but it's now evolved to ADHD, Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. And I guess really the reason I wanted to record this was it's a horrifically named condition or issue. Absolutely horrific. Calling it a disorder really kind of exaggerates what it is. And don't get me wrong, there's levels to this. There's many of us have a lot of the features of this. So you could say a lot of us have a touch of this. And then, of course, there's just the intensity of it. Just some of us have it really bad where it's a struggle. It's a struggle to operate in our society as somebody would, I hate the term, but say a normal person would interact. And I feel compelled to talk about this because I think a lot of what I've been telling my son translates to a lot of us in this profession, because I feel like many of us are drawn to doing this and many are quite successful in it because of many of the other features of this condition. I guess I'd just like to share that too many of us are really familiar with the quote unquote disorder part, the inattentiveness or inattention, the hyperactivity, the impulsivity, stuff like that. And that can be true, of course. I mean, that's stuff right out of the DSM, but there's stuff we don't talk about enough. And the stuff I talk to my son about that I think applies. And that's many of you, many of us with ADD have superpowers, or really features of it give us an advantage. You've probably heard me talk about it quite a bit, although I don't know that I'd necessarily link it with ADHD, is the hyperfocus. Some of you that know me or have worked around me, been around me when I'm doing something or paying attention to something, you probably notice you don't exist. If I'm honed in on an issue, focused, my attention is on something, quite literally the world disappears. And all there is that whatever I'm focused on, whatever I'm doing, scan tool, laptop, book, car, and in my own thoughts, looking at a car, looking at a waveform, looking at scan data, reading service information, sitting at my desk or workstation with a soldering iron, you can come in and you can call my name and you can sit there and do it for a minute. I'm not ignoring you. I think, ignoring is I hear you. I just choose not to respond. I do not hear you. You do not exist. That is a feature of ADHD, and one that I found has helped me immensely. It gets me in a lot of trouble, don't get me wrong. Outright people being upset at me or creating strife, ruffling feathers, because the assumption is I'm just ignoring you. Like, I hear you plain and clear. I'm not responding. That is not the truth. That is absolutely not the truth. So hyperfocus can be a real advantage. Doing things that require attention, acquire focus in environments with a lot of distractions, the ability to just tune out the world. And I struggle to say ability because sometimes it's not conscious. It's really unconscious. Honestly, as I start talking about this stuff, I'm hoping those of you that have this or somewhere on the spectrum of that or on the spectrum of neurodiversity, that you start not feeling so down, or I don't know, maybe some of you are depressed, and I don't say that mockingly at all or sarcastically, that you don't look at yourself as any less than anybody else, that you have some weaknesses and then you have some strengths. And I guess I would just hope that you start feeling better about it and about yourself, and that if you can manage a little better the more negative aspects, if you will, the negative features, but lean into those positives. More positives are, I'm going to say, linking. That's not a technical term that I've seen anywhere, but a lot of us, or you, us, if I do include myself in that, I've never been formally diagnosed. My wife has suggested that I have it, and it's just a fairly well managed version, if you will, that I somehow manage it quite well, that you can make correlations to things that don't present themselves as being correlated to most other people, most quote unquote normal people. And that gives us a terrific advantage, especially when it comes to critical thinking, especially when it comes to creativity, especially when it comes to problem solving. We can make connections, or we can link certain things that do not seem related. We can do that. You can do that. And that just ends up being so powerful in the base, so powerful really outside of the base, to be quite honest. When it comes to management and marketing and that type of thing, like, it can become a huge advantage versus those that really don't naturally make certain connections that we might make a little more naturally, a little bit more on our own, honestly, a little bit more involuntarily, but things will make sense. And I guess I find that there might be a lot of representation of that in this podcast, that I feel like sometimes I'm reaching on some correlations and connections, and yet many, I don't know if I would personally say all. I would leave that up to you, the listener, to just determine that. But stuff that's really outside the box, you know, the favorite ones are like the professional wrestling and Metallica. You know, those were early on, and I think it keeps going on through that. It may be, if I truly have some, and I'm sure I have some certain level of ADHD, but that seems to be a feature of it, an advantage, a quote unquote superpower, if you will. And some of you may have that and maybe don't recognize it that way, or don't think of it that way. And I kind of hope you do. Another feature often is multitasking. I didn't get that one at all, not even a little bit. I do not multitask for crap. And okay, technically I would argue nobody does. It's impossible. But you can jump back and forth from one thing to another and change that focus rapidly. Many people with ADHD have that skill. I missed that one. I did not get that one at all. But just think about how one could really, really exceed in a profession like ours, especially certain systems. And I'm not talking about just vehicle systems, but business systems, compensation schemes, if you will, where the ability to multitask and multitask well becomes a huge advantage versus someone that can't. Somebody that would be quote unquote normal. It's a massive, massive advantage, a superpower. NAPA Autotech training sessions are being conducted day and night in a town near you. This training caters to every level within your organization, be it a mechanical assistant, a mechanical specialist, a technology specialist, or a driver safety calibration specialist. Imagine a one-stop shop training partner in NAPA Autotech that will lead your team to a path to greatness. Autotech's entry-level Build-A-Tech classes convert the untapped potential of your new hires into money-making mechanical specialists. Autotech's higher-level tech update classes introduce specialists to the world of ever-changing technologies, which prevents your shop from getting technologically stagnant. Remember, if you're not moving forward, you're falling behind. And, turning to the front of the store, the Autotech Service Advisor class is an awesome way to hone your client advocate skill set, ultimately benefiting the customer through an improved vehicle repair experience. But it doesn't stop there. Imagine an electric vehicle class that takes your specialist well past the mundane, yet necessary safety topics. Well, it's here. Autotech's EV Ready training is a week-long curriculum that takes participants through a hands-on experience involving hybrids and electric vehicles. The session kicks off with the use of PPE and proper tooling while touching on required OSHA regulations. Then, the students dive into the lab vehicles to gain knowledge of the common high-voltage components on EV and hybrid vehicles and their function. Attendees will be taken on a path exposing them to different electric vehicle manufacturers to compare component form and location. Additionally, information about Level 1 and Level 2 charging systems will be included, along with a quick look at DC to DC charging. The operation and maintenance of subsystems are explored, including the different modes of Tesla operations, and so much more. So what are you waiting for? Commit to taking your business to the next level with NAPA Autotech training. Another one I think is empathy, one that many don't associate with ADHD. You start thinking about people with ADHD and they're sitting there shaking, fidgeting, can't focus on anything. Squirrel. That's what we think. That's what we're always thinking about ADHD. And yet now we're talking about hyperfocus. We're talking about creativity, talking about multitasking, and now empathy. Many people with ADHD have a really, really good sense of the temperature of a room. Or I almost hate this reference. My wife listens to this. She's going to love this. I don't really buy into energy, people's energy, but I think it's a term we use for empathy or picking up on their mannerisms. Many people with ADHD are extremely good at picking up nuances of people's mannerisms and being able to sense very, very skillfully, maybe not skillfully even, maybe just naturally, how that person is responding, what they're feeling. Imagine that sitting at the front counter as a service advisor, as a customer service representative, as an owner, as a manager, dealing with clients and or colleagues, employees, teammates, whatever you want to call it, associates, or whatever titles we're all rattling off nowadays for employees. It's a tremendous advantage. It's a tremendous skill or ability, really an ability to kind of sense how somebody is responding to what you're telling them. And I'm not saying to a manipulative degree. It's really just how to do right by them and can keep the communication lines open. Maybe averting people shutting down. Maybe averting people getting scared, offended, at the front counter as you're explaining repair work or what's needed, to be able to sense that and respond to that. Or when people come in, they're already flustered. They're going to be spending a lot of money they don't want to spend. That's where auto repair lives, man. We are taking people's money that they do not want to spend. If you have a shop located next to a Gander Mountain or Dick's Sporting Goods or, I don't know, Bass Pro Shop, something like that. If your shop's located next to that and somebody's needs a catalytic converter on their car and they're going to spend $2,000. They're not so happy. But if they're there for an oil change and they just so happen to walk over and they come back with a brand new shotgun or rifle that they've spent $2,000 on, there's probably grinning ear to ear. Look at what I got. So that's where we live. Being able to pick up on that stuff, being able to sense with fair accuracy someone's energy is yet another superpower. And then I think the other thing is that energy level, and I mean, not like how somebody's mannerisms and all that, and they're feeling good or bad. I mean, just actual energy, physical energy, the go, 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 people with a motor, just enthusiasm, exuberance, energy, go, go, go. A lot of shop owners, a lot of managers love that. especially with certain pay plans, right? Go, go, go. Boy, are they a go-getter. Yet another feature of ADHD. Does it mean that if you display any one of these on its own or even in combination that you have ADHD? Maybe not. You know, the issue with it is, and I don't know, Margaret, if she's listening to this, might not like what I'm about to say, but the diagnosis of ADHD to me looks like it's a lot more opinion than real categorical fact. And that's not to say ADHD doesn't exist. It's just the diagnosis part gets a little, I don't know, we'll use a technical term, wonky. Gets a little wonky. Yeah, and I really don't want to forget to mention, if you do feel like you may be neurodivergent or have ADHD or something else, think you're on the spectrum, kind of like the autism spectrum. Glenn Forehand, a good friend of mine in Minnesota here, has been on the show before, has started a Facebook group. It's not very big, and I don't know that they're necessarily looking for it to just explode, but it's called Neurodivergent in the Automotive Industry. And it is a place for many of us to gather, offer support, ask for support, give advice, receive advice. It is a wonderful resource that I think is going to continue, especially as we kind of lean on each other a little bit. But I hope that in listening to this, you pick up a little bit more confidence and start feeling better about yourself and what you have to offer. And if you have certain features of this that are a little more on the debilitating side, you know, where the impulsiveness is a little too difficult to manage, that you do seek help. And by help, I want to be careful I word that. Help's sometimes a dangerous word. Look for a really good counselor, which I know is really easy to say, but you might have to go through a few of them. I got to level with you that I am not a doctor. I don't want anyone to take what I say to be remotely related to medical advice. But I will say there is a growing number of studies coming out, building up the case of medication assistance is not a strong long-term solution. The medications work really, really well at managing certain symptoms, especially the ones that are not necessarily socially acceptable, like hyperactivity, like impulsiveness. Again, please do not read any more into this that I'm trying to tell you don't go on the meds. It's just something you need to talk to a professional, a counselor, therapist, whatever. You need to bring it up and start discussing the long term, because the studies are starting not to be so supportive of it. Does it help with the hyperactivity? Yes. Does it help with the impulsiveness? Yes. So you're better behaved. But, you know, if you're taking these to be able to better focus, be more productive, to learn more, the data is not necessarily supporting that. And again, please do not read into that to just start going off meds to avoid them. Just please have a conversation and then hopefully trust whatever professional, whoever you're talking to, that the best course of action for you and what to look for, what to monitor, is information you should know about. And hopefully they are on top of, and at least starts a very good conversation about how to manage the symptoms and maybe reduce some of the less socially acceptable behaviors and lean in on more of the beneficial. And don't get me wrong, sometimes they're double-edged swords. I hope this didn't come off overly serious. It's just, you know, I've seen my kid struggle, and a lot of the struggle is just feeling like he doesn't meet social norms. And normal is such a nasty, nasty social construct. It really is. And to have it affect your selfish image, self-esteem negatively is really no bueno. There are things that you can use to your advantage. There is support systems out there. There is growing bodies of evidence on how to treat the more severe aspects of ADHD. Of course, medication. There's a ton of medications. And also, I know I was talking about medications and the studies being non-supportive. The one thing I do want to mention is they are tested heavily and seem overwhelmingly safe. Don't get me wrong, there's a couple of things, I think, namely about Adderall that are a little concerning. Again, you bring it up with your medical professional, you bring it up with your counselor, your therapist, and you come up with the best course of action for you to manage what you're looking to manage and why you're trying to manage it. And there's so many support systems. I guess it's also jumping around a little bit. The non-medication treatments. Some of them are very much like little games that require you to focus. And I think over that kind of develops that muscle. And also, I think mentally a little bit, at least, not exhausts, but at least takes away some of that energy, takes away some of that, just that the motor running, that you're getting a little tired, a little bit of wear you out a little bit and more, and just causing certain parts of the brain to, teaching them to work a certain way. So that is how I will leave you. I hope you enjoyed this, or if you know somebody that's struggling, maybe link it their way and they can seek out different treatments. And also just, don't let it run you down. There are really, really advantageous features of having ADHD, and don't ignore that. Just don't ignore that. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you to NAPA Autotech Training for sponsoring. Thank you, Aftermarket Radio Network, for making this all possible. And if you have ideas or want to be on the show, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can email me at mattfanslowpodcast@gmail.com. And until next time, take care.
You've been listening to Matt Fanslow, diagnosing the aftermarket A to Z on the Aftermarket Radio Network. Follow Matt on your favorite listening app. He's very interested in what you have to say. Let him know what you'd like him to cover and come on the show. Matt is all for advancing the aftermarket. Find Matt Fanslow on social media and connect, or on aftermarketradionetwork.com.